Hello, everyone. Good day to all. Hope you can hear me. Welcome to our new session of the Bexel Manager step-by-step online education webinars. My name is Mileta Pejovic. I'm a BIM manager at Bexel Consulting, and today I will teach you Bexel Manager workflows. If you were already with us during few last weeks and following previous sessions, then you're probably familiar with the common tools and workflows for 3D BIM analysis and quantification using Bexel Manager. But if you're with us for the first time, or if you missed some of the previous webinars, don't worry, all the sessions will be recorded. And once entire educational program is completed, you'll be able to download the videos of all recorded sessions. So today we are going a step forward, and according to education plan, we'll follow the 8th lesson of our step-by-step guide, which describes process of creating cost classification and cost versions using our BIM platform. If you are using Bexel Manager BIM platform already, I want to remind you that all educational materials which could help you to be proficient using it can be accessed via our bexelmanager.com webpage. And our user area. So you can use this user area button to access the user area materials and all these manuals, tutorials, add-ins, and all helpful material that we upload progressively. And all these materials are downloadable for free. So if you're not familiar with the Bexel Manager, you can download free trial version of our software using standard trial requests. So we can go back to our main page. And using bexelmanager.com, you can access the trial request. And using standard trial, you can download the standard trial version of our software using this one. The trial period is for 30 days. But if you are a student or an employee in educational institutions, you can download the educational license. So this one lasts for a period of 1 year. Along with the installation, you'll receive a fully developed sample BIM model for testing purposes and an account for accessing our user area, which I previously accessed. And also, you'll be able to download all this free educational material. In order to follow this one, this session for today, I suggest you to download the Bexel Manager step-by-step workflow guide, this one, and then you can follow all the steps which will be explained today and which are explained in the previous sessions, if you haven't done this already. And also, as you know, for any questions, use the Q&A, and my colleagues and I will try to answer to all your questions. So far, you learned in the previous sessions how to read and access important information of your project, how to visually review the project using the Building Explorer, custom breakdowns, selection sets, and you know how to manage or create additional properties or metadata of your project. And finally, on the last session, you learned how to coordinate all the possible issues during design, or all design issues related to coordination and clashes using the clash detection module, which is available as a standard tool in the Bexel Manager. As mentioned before, today I'll show you Bexel Manager modules for cost management. This is a topic of 8th lesson of these webinar sessions. So these modules are cost editor and assigned items. And as all previously explained tools which you are using, all previously explained modules of Bexel Manager, these ones are also positioned in a lower part of user interface and can be accessed just by clicking on these tabs right here. Cost editor is essentially a cost database, and designed or assigned items is a place where you keep all cost versions of your project. These tabs, as I've explained, are positioned right here. And cost editor as a unique module consists of 3 different palettes, or actually it contains 3 different palettes, which are classification editor, cost item definitions, and resources. And later I will explain all these tabs and what are these used for. So for the start, we need to create cost classification, or a cost database structure, basically, which is also the similar thing as a work breakdown structure. These are similar terms which you're using on your project when it comes to the cost classification and, of course, cost estimation. So in order to create cost classification using Bexel Manager, there are several workflows to do it. And I will explain each of these. So the first workflow to create cost classification from scratch is entirely using Bexel Manager as a platform for that. So in order to create new classification for your cost work breakdown structure, you need to go to the cost editor and create new classification. So the tool for creating new classification is this button right here, which says new classification. So just by clicking on it, we can create new classification. And following the educational material which you downloaded from the website, we're gonna name this one as a demo cost classification. And creating this, we actually created master classification item. So this is just a, let's say, container for your future classification or your cost database. This is a folder which will contain all the cost classification and cost items. And this is the basic way how to create it in the Bexel Manager itself. Of course, we have a lot of different options to create cost classification entirely via Bexel Manager or using the external applications such as Excel, or creating entire classification system or the structure using the Excel spreadsheets. So you can do the same thing and import these classification created in the Excels using Bexel Manager. The only difference using Bexel Manager and your common workflow is if you want to import cost classification from the Excel, then the classification or the Excel format has to be in proper way, or actually formatted in a proper way, so the Bexel Manager can read this information. So the best way in order to optimize, or in order to make sure that your Excel spreadsheet will be formatted in order to be successfully or flawlessly imported back into the Bexel Manager, is to create some master item, such as this one that we created, and export this using the export button into the Excel. And the Bexel manager will export this into the folder which you specify. And then you'll be able to modify and create new Excel spreadsheets, but in a proper format. So this is the exported cost classification. And I will open this one. Once it's opened, you see the form of the Excel spreadsheets, which can be used to create your own cost classifications entirely, and then import this into Bexel Manager as your cost classification structure. Once it's exported, you're gonna see, or you notice that this document have 3 sheets. The first one is a sheet for the help. And in this sheet, you'll be able to see all the instructions how to properly create your rows and the columns of the future classification system. So this is a help with instructions how to properly create the rows. The classification sheet is the place where you create your classification structure or your cost classification database. And the resources sheet is a sheet where you can specify your resources. But we're gonna get to that point during this webinar as well. So once you create this, you can import these into Bexel Manager as well. So let me just show you how this works. I'm gonna close this one. Without any saves. And we're gonna create new classification. So this one will be new, which will be imported from the Excel spreadsheet. So if I choose the option import, I can import the previously exported Excel spreadsheet. But since we didn't modify it, or since we didn't create any changes to it, you'll be able to see that there is no difference into this one. So if I just open it, it's practically just the empty master classification item. But later on during this session, I will show you how to create some additional classification and cost items as well. So this is the second way how you can create your cost classification. The third one is using the already created custom breakdowns or quantity takeoffs. So if you're with us on a previous sessions, you're probably familiar with the custom breakdowns. The custom breakdowns helps you to create your own custom breakdowns of the project or custom breakdowns of the elements of your project according to specific segregation which you specified. In this case, we have some kind of custom breakdown which is based on the categories and the families. And this one can be used to create new classification or new cost classification. Of course, the same can be used, or the same can be done using the quantity takeoffs. So you're also familiar with the quantity takeoffs. You can generate and create multiple quantity estimations using, again, different breakdown systems. And all these systems or these breakdown structures that you specified in the quantity takeoffs or in the custom breakdowns can be used to automatically create or recreate custom breakdowns according to this breakdown structure or according to this breakdown structure. So these are, let's say, pretty new features of Bexel Manager, and these are really, really helpful and save you a lot of time. So how this process works. In order to create new cost classification from the custom breakdowns or quantity takeoffs, first you have to create your custom breakdown or quantity takeoff. In this sample model, you already have these custom breakdowns and quantity takeoffs generated, and we can create new classification based on this. So how this works, I'm going to create new classification. Of course, Bexel Manager allows you to create multiple cost classification systems and databases actually, and all these different cost classification systems are saved in your project, and you can easily switch between different cost classification systems just by changing the main view or changing which one is going to be presented in this window for classification and cost editor. So the new one will be called new custom breakdown system based cost classification. So once we created the master classification item, which is this folder, we can use these advanced features to create entirely cost classification database using this breakdown or the quantity takeoff breakdown. So this one is based on the custom breakdown. So I will show you how to do this. First thing is just double click or just right click on this created master item in your cost classification. And the system will provide you additional options for creating different things. And the ones which you're going to use in this case is creation wizard. So using creation wizard, we're going to create new cost classification based from custom breakdown. So the system will read all available custom breakdowns in your project. You can switch between different between different custom breakdowns which you created using the custom breakdowns. And then once you select the ones which you're going to use for creating cost classification, you can choose it and select additional options which will be used to specifically code and create additional information for for each of your cost items. So by default, the system will automatically create all cost items, not just the classification items or the folders or subfolders, but also the system will create cost items itself if this option is checked. The next option is the code. So if any of your elements in the BIM model have specific properties or specific metadata included, which can be used to provide specific code for the cost items, we can use it. So in this case, for this demo sample model, we can use the uniformat or master format classification. But in this case, I want to show you how, if you don't have any property in your BIM project, you can use this option outline level. So using the outline level, the system or the Bexel Manager will automatically create the codes, and your cost classification items and your cost items itself will have automatically generated code. The next option is unit cost. So similarly, as you can add or populate specific metadata in your BIM elements, such as codes, attributes, properties, whatever you're using for specific segregation purposes of your BIM project, or just to populate the metadata which is requested by the client, you can also include the price data. So for each element in your project, using the authoring tool, you can add specific cost information. And this information can also be used as a unit price for each element if you have this kind of information included in the project. In this case, we don't have these information, but you can see that the list of all available properties is here available. So you can choose any property to be actually used as a price or unit price in your classification. In this case, I'm not going to use anything because we don't have any property made specifically for this. And for the quantity formula, which is a really important thing which system uses to calculate the quantity and the price of your project, here we can specify which of these properties will be used to automatically create all the cost items entirely. So for this automatic creation of the cost classification, usually you're gonna use some of the available quantity formulas, and this is something that you usually used in your quantity takeoff when you created quantity takeoffs, such as count, volume, area, length, and so on. But in this case, because we are creating new custom breakdowns or new cost classification using custom breakdowns, we're going to use the none. So whatever you choose here, additionally, once the new cost classification is created, you can adjust manually or edit any of these automatically generated cost items. So whatever you choose, know that you can additionally adjust all these informations. So for this purpose, I'm going to use none, and I'm going to hit OK. So the system now automatically creates new cost classification based on the custom breakdown. And you see all items, all the classification items and cost items have specific codes, and these codes are automatically generated using the Bexel manager. So this is something that the system done automatically. So we have air terminals, beams, cable tray fittings, ceilings, conduits, and so on. Everything here generated automatically based on this custom breakdown. And of course, each of these, let's say, cost classification items have additional level of segregation, and these are cost items. And each item have its own code, its own name. Name is also automatically generated based on the name of these cost classification, or based on this custom breakdown items. So the name is the same. And of course, you see in the next or the following columns in this window, the cost item counts, which tells you how many items have each of these folders in your cost classification. So this folder have 1 cost item. This folder have 7 cost items, and so on. The next columns are also providing you additional information, which are unit cost or unit price, since we created this one automatically without any property which we use to create the price. The system generated automatic price, which is 0. Daily output is also automatically generated, and default value is 1. Quantity type is also automatically generated. It's numeric, and it basically just counts your elements, and the quantity unit is not specified yet, and neither the quantity formula. So this is something that you can specify or change manually, but this is also something that I will cover later on. This is just to understand how you can easily create entire cost classification structure using different workflows. And the element query column is also automatically generated because the system created this one using the custom breakdown. And of course, custom breakdowns are created using specific properties which are used to segregate or organize these elements according to your needs. So the same rules which are used here in your custom breakdown are used in your cost classification. So the elements are segregated based on the category and then based on the families. So the folder have the segregation based on the category, and all the cost items have the segregation based on the family name. So this is the third workflow, how you can create your cost classification entirely from scratch in the Bexel Manager using, in this case, custom breakdowns. The fourth or the last, let's say, workflow to create automatically cost classification structure is using the similar method, but from quantity takeoffs. In this case, I will open my beta version of the Bexel Manager just to show you some of the new features which will be available to all the customers in the upcoming update of the Bexel Manager. So right here, I'm gonna open the beta version of the platform. And the similar project or the same project is here. And I want to create new cost classification from the quantity takeoff. Similarly, as a previous, we're gonna create new classification from or QTO based. And the system created the master item. And now we can generate entirely new cost classification based on the available quantity takeoffs. In this project, I have a quantity takeoff, which is created using the specific structure using selection sets as a first level of hierarchy, and then categories of the elements, and then probably the family or the family types and the names of these elements. So we're going to use the same structure to create the cost classification. The feature which is new and which will be available to all of you in the upcoming release is define code. So previously, if we use the system to automatically generate the codes for all the cost items and all classification items, the system done that automatically without any specific settings. But here in this version or in this option, you will able to define your own code. So using the option define code, we can specify how the system will generate the code or the coding system. So in this case, I will specify that for the first level of hierarchy, we're going to use, let's say, not numbers, but the letters from the alphabet. So I'm going to use the uppercase letters in the length of 1, for example. And the separator for the code levels will be dot. We can change it. We can change it to any let's say, symbol from the keyboard. So I'm going to use the dot and hit OK. So the first level of hierarchy of the structure for the coding will be uppercase letter. So the next level will be, for example, the lowercase letter. And the last level will be numbers in the length of 2 symbols. So if this is something that I that is according to my needs or according to my requirements, I will save this code scheme, hit OK, and then when we create new cost classification using creation wizard, in this case using the quantity takeoff. Previously, I've explained the custom breakdown. Now using the quantity takeoff, the system will read all available quantity takeoffs. Again, we have only one QTO-based cost structure. And again, for the code, I'm going to use scheme in this case. So the system will use this predefined code or predefined scheme for coding in order to provide the codes for generated cost classification and cost items. The next thing is also, if available, apply or define specific price, unit price. In this case, of course, we also don't have any unit price defined, so I'm going to choose none. And for the quantity formula, we can choose count. And when I hit OK, the system will generate new classification, new cost classification, but with predefined codes. So now we have a first level of hierarchy is the uppercase letter. Then we have the lowercase letter. And for the last level of hierarchy, we have the numbers. And this is really, really a flexible way to create entirely and automatically your cost classification from available projects. So this is something that I just wanted to present, and this is something that you can expect in the upcoming releases of the Bexel Manager. So if these workflows to create your cost classification are clear or understandable, now I will explain how to generate or how to manually create your classification items, which are basically folders or subfolder structure, and of course, how to create your cost items. So again, we have several different approaches or workflows, how you can do this in the Bexel Manager or how you can do this in the Excel spreadsheets. So of course, once you generated your cost classification, you can exchange these information with other stakeholders on the project, with your colleagues on the project, and you can share all these generated information. One way to exchange all these information is using the exchange button in your main options of the Bexel Manager, which can be accessed in the upper left corner of user interface, and clicking the exchange button. So if you want to just exchange the information with other stakeholders, we can just export the available information. In this case, because we are exchanging the cost classification, I will just use this option, exchange cost classification, and hit next. So on the next window, we can choose which cost classification we want to exchange or to share with other participants of the project. And we can choose all of them or just one specific cost classification which you want to share. Hit OK, and the system will save BXF file in the specified location. So again, I'm going to use location for this and save this as a exchange. So we exported this cost classification entirely, and on other projects using the Bexel Manager, we can import this exported cost classification. So again, I'm gonna open another instance of the Bexel manager. So this is another instance, and I'm gonna import the exported cost classification. So this is the way how you can do this. In order to import or exchange these information which are already exported, we can use the same thing or the same options. Go to the upper left uh, tool or the button of your user interface, use the option exchange, and then import the cost classification. So right here, I'm going to find the exported file. This is the one, and I'm going to hit open. So the system will ask which of the information you want to import. In this case, we're going to import cost classification, hit OK. And once we go to the cost editor, we're going to see that these new custom breakdowns based cost classification is imported. So you see, this is the project from which we exported this, and this is the project where we imported this. So this is one way how you can export and exchange this information. The other way is also using the Excel spreadsheets. So at the beginning, I show you how you can create just new master classification item and then export this into Excel spreadsheet, which was almost or basically empty. So you have to populate the data into it. In this case, I'm going to export this new custom breakdown based classification using the export button to Excel. So this one will be called new custom breakdown based cost classification, and save it. So this is another way how you can exchange cost classification. The generated Excel looks like this. So now you have all these rows populated, all the columns also populated, and you can see how this Excel spreadsheet is generated. You can see the structure, and you can also import these information back into the Bexel manager itself. So once exported, you see all the cost items generated. And once we close it or save this, I can also go back to another instance of the Bexel manager and show you how to import this data from the Excel spreadsheet. So again, I will create new classification, and this one will be called new So again, we have to create this one master item, and then we can import or use Excel spreadsheet to import the data or import all the classification or all the structure of the cost database. So once we hit import and find the Excel file which we want to import, in this case, this is new CBS based cost classification, and hit OK. So the system provides you info that import is completed successfully. And then if we expand all the items from the generated cost classification, you'll be able to see all the imported cost classification and cost items, cost definition items, which are imported from the Excel spreadsheet. So these are all different ways how to automatically generate cost classification, how to import and exchange all these created cost classification structures using the exchange option or using the option to import and export Excel spreadsheets. So if this is clear, I'm going to continue with the presentation or explaining how to create manually or how to generate each of these classification items and each of these cost items manually if it's needed. And of course, by doing that, I will explain you what all these information and what all these columns mean and what are all these information, what is the purpose of all these information in your classification and cost items. So the next thing is again to create new classification, or we can go back to the this demo cost classification which we created at the beginning, which is practically just the placeholder for the cost classification, and we're going to create new classification item manually. Of course, if you're doing or if you're using the creation wizard, as previously explained, you can generate your entire cost classification structure using custom breakdowns and selection sets. If you want to do it manually, this is the way how to do it. Just right click on the cost classification. And of course, this is one of the ways how to do it manually in the Bexel manager. So right click on the generated master item and choose the option new classification item. So in this way, you're going to create new folder or the subfolders for your future cost items. So in this case, I will name or provide the code for this new generated classification item 01. And for the, let's say, the name of this cost classification item, I will give the name, for example, the classification for walls. So what we basically doing is creating subfolder where we're going to include additional cost items, and these cost items will include only wall elements of the project. So if we want to tell the system that this folder will only include specific B-model elements, we can use additional option or use the queries or set this, the specific rules which will be used to organize and structurize the elements according to specific or provided set of rules. So in this case, if we want to include only category or the type of the elements walls, we're going to hit the option for the queries, change, and insert specific query. So similarly, as you use the queries to generate your smart selection sets, using the similar window, you can organize and create your, let's say, smart cost items and cost classification items, which will automatically find and link or relate to specific B-model elements according to set of rules, which you define here. So in this case, we want to just include the category of walls, and I'm going to select the category for the query walls and hit OK. Of course, in this window, you can change, let's say, different queries or different rules which will be used to create your query. So right here, clicking on the right mouse button, you can modify your, let's say, logic or the set of rules from all of the following into, for example, any. Or you can use the negation. So in this case, if I hit OK, the system will include all elements except the category of the walls, because we said all the elements which are not category of the wall. Again, I'm going to use the option negate again, and then all the elements which are in the category of wall will be included or will be applicable for this cost classification. So if I hit OK and finish creation of this classification item, you see that new subfolder is created and the element query column is populated. And if we try to, let's say, right click on it and use option select applicable element, which automatically selects all elements which are applicable to this generated cost classification item, or in this case, in this classification item, the system will automatically select all these elements based on the provided queries. So if I select applicable elements, you see only category of the walls is selected. And this works okay. So this is the way how to create a new classification item in the Bexel manager itself. If you want to do the same thing in the Excel spreadsheet, you can do that as well. I'm going to open the Excel spreadsheet, the one that we exported at the beginning of the project, which is practically the empty cost classification, you see. And I'm going to create new. I'm going to create new classification item. So in order to create new classification item, you have to provide specific outline level, code, and the name for your cost classification item. And of course, if you want to include specific queries, these queries can be also specified right here in the column element query. So how this works, I'm going to create new row, specify the outline level, which will be 1.1. I'm going to specify the code, which will be also 01, and provide a name, which will also be let's say, wall classification item. You can also specify description or include some description for each of your classification items. In this case, I will use the, let's say, description, all the walls. And if you want to include the query or tell the system how to automatically link or relate to specific categories or the elements from the project, we're going to populate this column for the element queries. If you want to use the help, you can use that right now, and the system will tell you that if you want to use the category for specific query, then this is the expression used for that. So I'm going to copy this one. This is the easiest way, paste it. And since the category for the walls is walls, I'm just going to replace this into walls. And save this. Or we can save this as a new document, which will be called demo cost classification import or Excel. So once the creation of the cost classification is completed, I'm going to close this and go back to my project, create new classification. And hit OK. So now we can import this classification item, which we generated in the Excel spreadsheet. So the system automatically imported it, and you see the same thing is generated here. I'm going to unselect all elements from the project. We have vol classification item. We have element query is generated, and we can try to find if the system automatically finds all elements which are applicable. The same result. So this is another way how you can create your classification item in the Bexel manager or using Excel spreadsheets. And now we're going to go to the last level, or the most detailed item in the cost classification. And this one is actually cost item. So if you want to create your own cost items, then first you have to create your subfolders, create the structure of your cost classification, and then you can populate each folder with additional cost items. If you do it manually, if you do it automatically from the quantity takeoffs or the custom breakdowns, the system will do everything for you. So you don't have to waste your time. In order to do that manually, again, we have several workflows. The first one is, again, using the Bexel manager entirely. Right click on the Bexel or created classification item, and then use option new cost item. So classification items are folders or subfolders which are containers for your cost items. If you want to create cost item, then use the option, right click, use the option new cost item. And now we go to the next, let's say, information which allow you to create new cost item from new definition or from existing definition. In this case, because we are creating totally new cost item from scratch, we're going to use the option from new definition. Once it's created, or once you import several cost classification databases, including the items, you'll be able to choose from existing definition, because Bexel Manager, once you create your cost classification and cost items, keeps all the created items in the list of cost item definitions. So once you import any of the cost classification, previously we imported the cost classification from the Excel and the one which we generated from the custom breakdowns, all these cost items are saved within the cost item definition. So all items coming from different cost classifications, from different cost structures, are saved here. And each of them have specific code, name, and of course, all additional information, which I will explain later on. So if you want to create a new one, this is the way. New cost item from new definition. And again, we can specify the code for this, which will be 01. And we're gonna name this cost item, for example, concrete wall pouring or something like that. So this is the code. This is the name of the cost item and description. You can specify full description for each of your cost items according to specific descriptions that you usually use when you're creating your cost estimation and your work breakdown structure for the projects, in any language, of course. The first set of options which are available in this window is general options where you can specify specific information for each cost item. These are all information which are defining your cost items. So first one is general information where you're specifying the quantity type and unit for that quantity type of your cost item. In this case, because we are talking about concrete wall pouring or concrete, we're going to select the volume. And you can choose from the list of available quantity types. I'm going to select volume, and for the quantity unit, usually when it comes to the volume, we're going to use the cubic meters. And again, we can specify the price. This is the place where you can specify the unit price for each created cost item. If you have the price from the market, you can just type in the price, and that's it. If you don't have the price from the market, but you want to include all available information, if you're for example, subcontractor and you're aware of your resources and you want to include all these information into the unit price, then we can use the additional tab for resources. But again, this is something that I will explain a little bit later. So for this, let's say, purpose for creating just the placeholder for your cost item, I'm going to again go to the mapping option where we can specify the query. Again, as we specify the query or set of rules, how the system will automatically select or apply the cost item to specific elements, here we can do the same thing to the cost item. So in this case, we're going to use only walls which have specific name containing structural or concrete or something like that. So for the queries, we can include additional query which will include, for example, family name. And in this case, because I know that in this project, you can use any property available in the project. In this case, in this specific demo project, we know that all structural walls or all the structural elements have, let's say, prefix or part of the name contains ST. So we can use the option contains or begins with ST. And when I hit OK, the system will automatically generate this query. And additional option, which is important when you're defining your cost item, is formula. So the system will gonna create cost item, which will calculate the price according to unit price defined here and specific property. So the unit price will be multiplied with specific property of your B model elements. In this case, because we are talking about concrete walls or pouring concrete in the walls, we're going to use the property for the volume. So I know that all the walls have the property for the volume. So we can go to the formula, go to the button change, and define which property will be used to calculate and multiply unit price with available properties. So within the fields, you'll be able to see all available properties in the project. And I'm going to select volume in this case. Double clicking on the property, you see the expression is populated, and you see that the volume property will be used to calculate the cost of your elements or a cost of your cost items. And of course, you can use additional options here. So if you're just going to use the option or the property volume, that's it. You can hit OK. But in case you want to include some additional formulas, you can specify specific formulas. You can type it in. You can multiply this property with some other property. This is also available. So you can use different types different kinds of available options to create accurate price for your cost items. So in this case, I'm just going to use the volume and hit OK. And if we go to OK, the system creates new cost item which have specific, let's say, quantity unit defined, formula, and element query. So if we try to find elements which following all the rules which are specified here, only structural walls, we can go to the select applicable elements and hit all again. And now you see only specific walls are selected, and only the walls which containing ST in their name are applicable to be calculated or applicable to calculate the price of these elements. Again, we can do the same thing in the Excel spreadsheet. Before going to the Excel spreadsheet, let me just show you how to fully define your resources. So I explained how you can define your unit price just by typing in the price from the market. But again, if you just want to use resources and define unit daily outputs and so on, you can use the option resource. But in order to use resources, you have to create the list of available resources. So before adding specific resources to your cost items, you have to define your resources. And for that, we're going to use the tab or this option within the cost editor, which is available or which is reserved for defining resources. Again, you can define your resources manually just by clicking here in this empty space and define list of your resources. So right here, I'm going to define a few resources which you're going to use for defining cost items. And these are going to be, let's say, labors. Labors, again, we can use the different types of resources. So I'm going to use, let's say, one for the equipment, which will be, for example, gas concrete pump. The new one for, let's say, materials, which will be concrete. And we can add some additional, let's say, labors, for example, foremans or something like that. So once you define your resources, define the name for the resources, then you can specify the type. So for the foremans and the laborers, we're going to specify that these types or these resources are actually labors, so that's fine. The quantity type column is the column where you specify or where you define how the price or how you're going to calculate the price for each resource. So in this case, the price per hour will be used to calculate the price for the foremans. So for the foremans, we're going to, let's say, specify that the price hourly is $85 for ready concrete mix. Because this is a material, the type will be changed to material, and the quantity type for concrete mix will be changed to the volume. Again, for different types of materials and resources, you can change the type and the quantity type as well. So you can choose whatever is applicable for that specific resource. In this case, the quantity unit cubic meters is fine. And we can specify the price for the 1 cubic meter of concrete mix. The next is the equipment in this case. So we can also change the type for this resource into equipment. And again, we can specify how to calculate the price. Usually for equipment, we calculating the price per day. So I'm going to use this per day, and I'm going to, let's say that this is, let's say, $600 per day. And for the laborers, we again going to calculate the price based on the hour. And for this one is going to be $80. Hit OK, and that's it. Now we specify the list of the resources which can be used in the project. Again, all these resources can be defined prior the project and then imported or exported, used in the other projects. And again, you can change your prices regularly, progressively, and when you change the price, automatically system will recalculate the price of the project. The last thing you can define within the resources is the color, and this color for the resources will be used in the following sessions when we talk about the, let's say, charts and the information which can be extracted from the Bexel projects. So the project or the color which you define here will be presentable and visible in the charts. So whatever you define here will be presented in the charts which can be exported. So once you define your resources, these resources can be used in the cost item definition. So I can go back to my cost item, right click on it and edit cost item definition in order to include my resources. So now you see that created resources are listed. We can automatically select all of these resources to be included and to calculate the price. Once we do this, the system automatically calculates the price based on the information available here. So what these information represent? These are the quantities of defined resources which are included in the price of the cost item. So practically what this means, if we want to execute or calculate 1 cubic meter of concrete wall pouring, and these are the resources which are defining the price for this, we're going to say that the unit price for the foreman is $85 hourly. And in order to execute the 1 cubic meter, we need, for example, let's say 8 hours or 1 foreman entirely. So we can change the quantity or daily quantity. Quantity is per hour because the quantity unit is hourly based, and daily output, daily quantity is daily based on a day. So we can change this into 1. The system will automatically change the quantity into 8 because 8 is default working hours per day. The ready concrete mix, for example, is let's say 12. And in this case, we are practically defining that these resources, which could also be considered as a crew, so these crew are executing daily, for example, 12 cubic meters. So when we specify this, the system automatically recalculates the cost. So whatever we specified here is needed to achieve daily output. So it means that we need 1 foreman, 1 concrete pump per day. We need, let's say, 2 laborers. So we can specify 16 working hours or 2 daily quantity. And we need 12 cubic meters of concrete to achieve 12 cubic meters of concrete daily. And the system automatically calculates the price based on the available resources and their price. Again, you can include some waste factor for specific materials. And once you do that, the system will also recalculate the price according to that. And now you have fully defined cost item, including mappings, queries, and resources. And we can hit OK. So you see all the columns are populated. We have the unit cost, which is automatically calculated based on the price and resources. And this is the way how you can do that entirely in the Bexel manager. The same thing can be achieved via Excel spreadsheets. So how to do that? I'm going to go back to the Excel spreadsheets that we created previously. We have vol classification item, and here we can also define resources. So we can define the resources list of our resources and all the resources which are defined here. So I don't want to waste any more time. So I'm going to show you how this Excel spreadsheet looks like. Practically, when you create this cost classification, including resources and the items, you can export it into Excel spreadsheet. We're going to replace this one. And you will see how this generated Excel spreadsheet looks like. So we have the main cost classification. We have the classification item, which are all walls, the structural walls. And then we have the cost item. Again, you have to specify the next outline level, the code for that. And of course, these are the description and all the information which we provided within the Bexel manager itself. You have to define your resources. If you create new resource here, you can specify the type. You can specify the quantity type again, how the price will be calculated. So again, I will calculate the price for this new labor based on the hour and specify the price, which is 120 bucks. You can also specify the color, which is in a hex code. So we can copy one of these, paste it, and that's it. And then we can use these resources in the new cost item. You can create new cost item, for example, here, or you can just define new resources to already generated cost item. Again, for each cost item, you have to specify query, which will be used to automatically find the elements which are applicable. You can include quantity formula, quantity type, unit. You can define daily output. And based on the prices of resources, which you can specify right here, from the list of available resources, you see that now we have new resource, which is defined right here in the sheet for the resources. And then you can specify the price, daily quantity needed to achieve daily output. And then you can specify the price right here, override, or the price will be used as it's used here. So I'm going to use the option, this one. So you can choose the same, or you can override the price right here. And again, the next thing you can specify the resource waste factor. Again, for this labor, we're going to tell that the waste factor is 0. So if we save this, we can use this Excel spreadsheet to import these resources back into the Excel, back from the Excel into the Bexel manager. And this is the way how you can generate your cost items and resources in the Bexel manager or using the Excel spreadsheet. And the last thing, once you created your cost classification, once you generated your cost items and included resources, then we can apply all these cost classification to the project in order to calculate the project price. So before we do that, I'm gonna open or exchange the cost classification with a demo sample project, which already have a, let's say, entire cost classification for this project based on the uniformat or master format. So we can use that to automatically calculate the price for the projects, just to see the price automatically calculated for the project. In this case, because we just included the price and the cost item for only one item, which are concrete walls, if we use the option auto assign cost item to new cost version, only the price for the structural concrete walls will be calculated. So the system will create new cost version, which is saved within the assigned items. And assigned items, as I said at the beginning, is the place where all the cost versions of the project are saved. So you see that the cost version is created right now, a few seconds ago. You can change the name of each cost version. So we can save this as a, let's say, new cost for concrete wall. And this is the price for the walls. You see that 26 elements is included. The quantity for these elements is 130 cubic meters, and the unit price, unit cost is 465. So multiplying quantity and unit cost, you see that the total cost is 60,000. Again, we can use the option right here within the assigned items to select elements which are included in the cost version using the right-click, right mouse button and select elements. You can isolate these elements. So you see that the price of these elements from the project is this one. This is the quantity. If we change the price of your cost items or the price of the resources right here, you see that the price of the cost item is also changed, because the price is changed, and automatically the price of the project is also changed. We can also see how the quantity or how the calculation is done. We can choose the option show mappings. So the system shows you how to calculate, how it calculated the price. So for example, again, if we go to the cost editor and change the formula for the calculation and include some additional, let's say, coefficients or something like that, again, the price will be changed. So if we go up again to the assigned items, now you see that the formula is changed. Let me go back to the cost editor just to check if everything is defined correctly. So if we change the calculation, so the volume will be calculated or multiplied, and of course the price will be also duplicated. And again, if we go to the filter applicable elements, it means that if we see all elements in the project, we can easily select elements in the project and see the price in the assigned item window. So for example, if we select some of the structural walls, you see that the price for only selected elements is this one. If we select additional elements, you see that the total cost and the quantity is changed based on selection. So this is also really, really nice way to calculate the price and the quantities on fly just for selected elements, or brief calculation of the quantities and the price based on selection. And of course, if you import entire cost classification for entire project, if I do that, if we import the uniformat classification, for example, from the Excel spreadsheet, let me just try to find it. You'll be able to see how the system automatically calculates the price for entire project. So we imported new uniformat-based classification. And for example, I'm going to show you the items. All items are smart with the specific queries. We can select applicable elements. So the system automatically finds elements which are applicable. All cost items have resources specified. We have the price, we have the formula, and if we use option right-click, auto assign cost items, again to new cost version, because we're going to create totally new cost classification or totally new cost estimation based on this classification system. The system will automatically calculate the price for entire project. And within the assign items, you see automatically assigned price cost version. We can turn off mappings or turn off the filterings, and then you see the total cost for the project. And for each classification and cost item, we can see the price, we can see the elements, we can select elements which are included in the quantification, or vice versa, we can select elements, filter by element selection, and we can see the price of selected elements. All these cost classification can be exported, as I previously explained, in the Excel spreadsheets, but also all these cost estimations, cost versions, can also be exported into Excel spreadsheets as well. And then you can compare multiple cost versions. You can create your own pivot tables. You can export just, for example, the cost versions for interior works, and just creating, let's say, some tendering packages for interior works, or just for the shell, for substructure, and so on, by selecting these and exporting selected elements or exported selected assigned items. And of course, just for let's say tips for the end, once you assign your cost classification to your B-model elements, you can use this assigned unassigned view, which shows you the elements which are calculated in the cost version and which are not calculated. So all elements which are colored in green basically are included in the cost version. If the elements are colored in a gray or black, it means that you have to assign the cost to these elements, or for some reason these elements were not auto-assigned using the auto-assign cost option, because some of these elements probably didn't have specific queries or some of the properties which are needed to calculate the price. Again, if we switch to the different cost version and go to assigned, unassigned view, you see that now only concrete walls are assigned. So this is another indicator of the elements which are included in the cost estimation and which are not. And also another way how to recognize the elements which are included in the cost classification is using these, let's say, visual indicator in the selection sets. And if this circle is yellow, it means that some of the elements are included. And if the circle is red, then these elements which are red are not included in the cost estimation. Hopefully, this was clear, and I've explained you several ways and several workflows how to calculate the price on your project using the automatic cost estimation in the Bexel manager, or creating entire cost classification in the Excel spreadsheet, importing these Excel spreadsheets, and then calculating the cost versions of the project. Let me check if you have some questions or unanswered questions, so we can try to answer the questions. So how many person can work on the project? Can we do cost estimation and clash detection at the same time within two different resources? Practically, you can share the project within a multiple persons, within multiple users on the project, and you can divide your let's say jobs or the works on the project. So if you are the person responsible to create cost classification and cost estimation, that's fine. The other person can do the let's say clash detection, quantifications, and so on. And then you can exchange all these information using the exchange export and import options. So you, if you're responsible for the cost classification, you can share your cost classification and cost version, hit OK, and that's it. The persons who are responsible for the, let's say, quantity takeoffs and the clashes, they can just export clashes and quantity takeoffs and export these items, and then you can import only these items into your project. And in that way, you can share the information and work simultaneously at the same project. Can I import Primavera file or MSP file for 5D BIM cost? You can import Primavera and MS project files, but if you import these information will be only available into the schedule and within the information which are coming from the schedule. If you want to import the cost classification and all the information regarding resources and the workforce and let's say daily outputs and so on, then you have to create your cost classification in the Bexel manager or in the Excel spreadsheets and then import that into Bexel. Can we do a monthly Carlo cost analysis and delay analysis? Currently, there is no feature to do the Carlo cost analysis and Carlo scheduling analysis. Hopefully, this is something that will be included in some upcoming releases of the Bexel Manager. Currently, there is no such feature in the Bexel Manager. How we do planned versus actual plan? Well, this is something that will be discussed in the next sessions of the Bexel Manager, when we talk about the planned and actual schedules and how to create the schedules entirely in the Bexel Manager. as we isolate elements with a new cost, can we generate a PDF report similar to Clash report instead of Excel spreadsheets? Currently, there is option to just generate the Excel spreadsheets, but also this is something that we also will include in some of the future releases. We already have some of the schedule reports which can be exported and generated into PDF files. Also, some of the let's say cost and assigned item reports, which also can be generated and exported into PDF files, but these tools also have to be a little bit more polished and updated. So you can do it, but it's not a, let's say, simple workflow. So you have to create your own template, create your own sheet, generate the report template, and then export this into Excel spreadsheets or into PDF files using the print option. So if you're using some of the PDF printers, you can do that. This is, let's say, a workaround for that. How can I see all recorded webinars? Yeah, all recorded webinars will be published probably online when entire sessions are completed. But for all current, let's say, participants, all recorded sessions will be provided or sent to you via emails. Can we do look-ahead plans in Bexel? Yes, you can do a look-ahead. But again, these look-ahead plans are related to the schedules. And this is something that also we're going to explain in the next session when we talk about scheduling engine, and how to create baseline schedule, actual schedule, and how you can generate look-ahead plans. I believe that I responded to all of your questions. If no more questions, thank you very much for taking participation in today's sessions, and hopefully see you tomorrow and on the next sessions next week. Thanks again, and see you. Bye-bye.